Hello and welcome back to another episode of Review to Review, the show where we go back and watch movies to see if we still like them. As always, my name's Adam.
And I'm Josh.
And this week we're going to be talking about the 2018 movie Ready Player One. And in case you guys aren't familiar with how things work around here, spoiler warning! So this is actually a movie that Josh and I got to see together when it first came out, and we saw it from two different perspectives. I'm the person who read the book before the movie came out.
And I read the book after I watched the movie.
And so initially when I went and saw the movie, I was looking forward to it, but I already knew there was going to be a whole lot of things that they weren't going to be able to put into the movie. For instance, robot sex brothel. But I do remember having a lot of fun the first time I saw it, and it was definitely worth the ticket admission.
And to me, there was a lot of pandering that went on in the movie in regards to using specific IPs in the ways that they did. But all in all, I still enjoyed it a lot.
And if there's something I can definitely say about this movie, it's something I realized when I was originally reading the book. About halfway through it, I realized, man, this is just a fan fiction. And in that same regard, the movie also feels like a fan fiction, only instead of being a fan fiction by Ernest Cline, it's more of a fan fiction done by Steven Spielberg. And depending on who you are, that fan fiction could be really interesting or it's not entertaining to you. And the VR is for sure the biggest sell in this movie. I remember being excited about the movie not just because of the concept, but how this was going to push VR as a technology forward. I know that more often than not, life imitates art, so if this movie was really popular, VR would definitely get a little bit of a push and we would see more of it in the mainstream. Now, saying that VR being part of the mainstream now has anything to do with this movie or book might be a bit of a stretch. However, I do think it helped firmly plant the idea in the average person's mind.
And I did grow up with a love for the idea of virtual reality. It's not quite full immersion, which is what I want, but we're definitely getting there.
The world of the Oasis is definitely awesome, and it's a place you wish existed. It's a hub of all sorts of games, IPs, movies, and all sorts of experiences you would want to have in a virtual reality.
And watching it through this time around, there's a lot about the movie that reminds me of VR Chat, from the way the portals look to just the general feel that it gives you. It's something that just gives you a lot of choice. You've got all these people running around as Master Chief, you've got Beetlejuice,
Tracer,
Akira,
Goro from Mortal Kombat,
the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Did you see them in there?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Iron Giant,
Battletoads,
Gundam Model RX-782,
Back to the Future.
And while it was cool to see all of these different IPs interacting, there were still a lot that were missing just from the book, also from what you would expect from a real-world experience. Now, the video game references as a whole are where this movie shines, and it's also where this movie falters. There's some things that are really funny to me, like trying to talk to your partner when you're gaming.
How are you still playing?
Extra life, long story. Sorry I shot you.
Or how if this world exists, there's more than one dude playing as Master Chief.
There is a concern that I personally have that I know we both share, which is a lot of the pandering to the IPs that may not be relevant in a few years. There's Jim Raynor from StarCraft, there's Tracer from Overwatch, and sure, that's fine in 2018 and maybe even now, but 5-10 years down the line, is anyone going to know who they are?
But if there's one thing we all know, Minecraft will definitely still be here.
With RTX ray tracing.
So the movie is about Wade Watts, who is a part of a worldwide hunt to find a hidden Easter egg that was put away by the Oasis's creator, James Halliday, and whoever finds it will be given control of this virtual reality. Now, the thing that makes Wade special is he is a massive fanboy, not just of the Oasis itself, but of its creator, James Halliday. He knows everything about this guy, his favorite food, his favorite music, his favorite video games, and he's using these clues to try and crack the trials.
And along with Wade is H, who's been a longtime friend of Wade, and both of these together are what's known as a gunter or an egg hunter.
Happy gunting.
Artemis, who is also introduced as a gunter, is another big fan of Halliday. She's also a big-time game streamer and an Oasis personality.
There's also Daito and Sho, who in the book are a really big part of the main crew, but in the movie they really just don't get much presence or really anything to do.
No big deal.
And of course this brings us to the main conflict of the movie. There's obviously your everyday people, but then you've got the big corporations such as IOI.
The guy who's trying to monetize literally every single pixel in the Oasis.
You think I'm a corporate asshole?
Now let's just go ahead and cover some of the things that we loved about the movie. For me, I really liked the fan service and seeing all these goofy little things here and there that very much remind me of what it's like to play a game online.
And of course the soundtrack was made to be nostalgic too.
Got songs like Jump by Van Halen or Making My Dreams Come True by Hall & Oates.
It really made it feel like Halliday himself was a huge nerd for 80s music as well. You do get some of the uncanny valley with a lot of the models, Artemis being the big one for me, but overall the transition between the real world and Oasis was really neat to me.
And in my opinion, that sort of uncanny valley effect actually works to the movie's benefit, where it makes it feel more like a video game. You need that separation of what the real world feels like and what this video game world feels like. Now, going from the good things, there are a few things that I really didn't like, or at least had questions about. Like, how does the Oasis work? The movie makes a big deal out of Wade suiting up in the beginning of the movie. Omnidirectional treadmill, haptic feedback gloves, goggles.
And then it kind of goes from the treadmill that you see at the beginning to people just flailing in the streets as if it's nothing.
And if you played video games, and specifically VR games like we've played before, how the fuck does that work?
I'd be falling over 24/7.
And just the concept of having a VR game that also works as an AR game, that makes no sense. In the whole movie, they have taken liberties from the book where really the only things that carry over are the character names and some of the core ideas. So if there was a specific scene in the book that you were really hoping to see and looking forward to seeing in the movie, you probably are not going to see it.
And heck, the biggest one that sticks out to me, it was a happy-go-lucky ending. Everyone was fine. In the book, Daito gets bloody thrown out of a skyscraper building and dies. So, high five, not so much as high four.
High five, more like a low five. Because he was thrown out of a building and that's probably not appropriate. And not just with the darker theme of Daito dying, but a lot of the darker themes as a whole don't translate into the movie. For instance, when Wade gets his heart broken, he spends a lot of his time in a brothel.
And even just touching on H's sexuality overall too.
There were a lot of themes in the book that were touched on, while maybe not super heavily, it would have still been cool to see them translated into the movie. And not to mention the fact that this just ruins society. In the book, there was just this idea of believability. Everybody began to isolate themselves. They all sort of drew back into their homes. They stayed to themselves so they could do whatever they wanted to do. But here, it was kind of weird that you could just see people just doing whatever they wanted out in the open. Like that guy who was just surfing out in the middle of the day. Or people stripping in their rooms but with the windows open. I don't care if I'm fully clothed or not. If I'm busting out my best pole dancing moves, I don't want anybody to see it unless they paid for it. There were a whole lot of daily life activities that take place in VR, but for the movie they decided to make them take place in the real world. So for instance, things like school, work. Here though, everybody's still out and about in a way that just kind of seems unnecessary for the world they're trying to build.
And as this last year is showing, I don't even know why offices are a thing. Why not just work in VR?
And speaking to how good the world of the Oasis looks, I hate how the real world looks.
It's like Cyberpunk, but without all the cool shit.
Everything sucks. Everybody lives in garbage housing. It's way too crowded. People are doing kickflips in the streets. Why wouldn't you want to spend all your time inside this thing?
I know I would.
But you gotta let yourself be a part of the real world so you can make out with a girl. And if you think about it, that's James Halliday's overall underlying message. His whole thing is how he misses the opportunity of being able to kiss this girl, spend time with this woman that he loved, that his best friend then married, which also, dick move, Simon Pegg. Hey, yeah, enjoy the video games, enjoy this thing I built you, but you also have to get out so you can procreate before your friend bangs the girl you like. Also, the choice to shut the Oasis down on Tuesdays and Thursdays, why? That seems to be the most inconvenient time to shut down, not 2 days in a row, not 2 consecutive days, a Tuesday and a Thursday. You can't look up porn or play video games. And it literally just seems like Wade picked these 2 days to turn it off so he can make out with his girlfriend IRL.
Now, personally, I'm not against that. Ready Player One really isn't a bad movie. It's just not necessarily something that's a must-watch or that you're just going to remember years down the line.
It's got a lot of parts that are really fun to see, a lot of cool, like, oh hey, look at that. But there's also a lot of stuff in the movie going on that I kind of just want to tune out because it never gets as important as it really should. And I don't mean to absolutely shred this movie to pieces because it's still an enjoyable film. It's a fun time for sure. But as a whole, it's kind of forgettable and it can't seem to really figure out exactly what it wants to be. And once the nostalgia and movie references have sort of worn off, I can't think of too many reasons to go back and watch the film. But our final thoughts on Ready Player One are, it's worth a watch or two. I am very curious to see exactly how dated some of this movie is going to see in just 10 years time. Not just with the IPs that were used in the movie, but with the concept of how the Oasis works. I'm sure we'll see some similarities moving forward, but there will definitely be some things that seem absolutely ridiculous in time. It's just a matter of how much time that will be. But if there's something that I will give the movie points for, it does sort of express this idea of connections. In this modern day of online games, VR chats, and so on and so forth, you have many different ways of meeting people from all over the world. And these people end up becoming some of the closest people to us, even though they may be the farthest away.
No man is a failure who has friends.
Which is an interesting thing to touch on too, because I mean, I've made some really good friends through video games and through the internet in general. Hell, I've attended weddings that resulted from this, and the best man of that wedding had never met the groom until that day.
And quite frankly, it's great to see that the movie understands that just because you've met somebody online doesn't mean that they can't be your true friend. But those have been our thoughts. Ultimately, we are far more curious about your thoughts. Go ahead and leave a comment down below how you felt about Ready Player One. You can tell us how you felt about the movie or the book. If you agree with us, great, and if not, let's fight about it.
And as always, thanks for coming back. We always like to share our opinions with you, and if you do like our content, feel free to like and subscribe, because we'd love to put out more.
But until then, my name's Adam.
And I'm Josh.
We'll see you guys next time.